Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mehmet Urekinci from SETA, and this evening we have a very interesting panel. Today there was a summit between Turkish and Greek leaders, President Erdogan and Prime Minister Mitsotakis. They met in Ankara for the 6th meeting of the Turkish-Greek High-Level Cooperation Council. And the meeting has just ended, and the press conference was just given by the two leaders, where there were also some agreements signed by the two sides on cooperation in matters like bilateral trade, investment, earthquake preparations, civilian protection, scientific research, joint investments, and cultural relations. But today's meeting was also important in the context of regional and global geopolitical shifts because of the recent developments in international politics for the last few years, like the war in Ukraine, the Gaza crisis, the change of administration, the coming of Trump administration in the United States, and the Syria issue, to say the least, but also global geopolitical shifts, the return of the great power competition, and the erosion of international law and institutions. These have impacts on long-standing disputes all over the world, and Turkish-Greek relations are among the most vulnerable, most prone to external shocks because of the location of the two countries and their relations with regional and global powers. So in two countries, there have been comments about the significance of today's meeting and possible interpretations and possible consequences of it. And right after the press conference of the two leaders, we are organizing a panel with both Turkish and Greek participation. We have very important and experienced panelists joining us. Well, we announced 4 panelists, but one of them, Professor Yücel Acer from Turkey, has just informed us that he is unable to attend because of a last moment emergency. But meanwhile, we have speakers from Turkey and Greece, and I want to give the floor without further ado, the first floor to Mrs. İno Afeduli, who is joining us from Eliamep, and she is the Senior Policy Advisor and the head of the Observatory of Geopolitics and Diplomacy. Mrs. Afeduli, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mehmet. A warm greetings to our friends in Turkey that are watching us, and hopefully, I mean, an international audience also watch this very topical discussion, in my view, just half an hour after the end of the statements at the presidential palace in Ankara between President Erdogan and Prime Minister Mitsotakis. I'm really, I would say, very pleased to watch this very positive atmosphere coming out of the meeting, because as you are all experienced scholars of international relations. In a bilateral meeting at this level, it's also, of course, the diplomatic language that counts, but also is the body language that counts. And there I saw a very positive body language as well. I saw both leaders having an understanding between each other. Carefully, I watched what each of them said, and I would say that a very positive outcome we can expect from the discussions they had. And this is, as you said in your introductory remarks, this is very encouraging because we are living in a very unstable world and we don't need additional instability. And our countries are two stable countries in the region, both members of NATO, as President Erdogan stressed, and I think this is very important to remind to our audiences that we are partners at NATO for more than 70 years. And so if our countries can contribute to the stability and safety of the region, this is already a very big thing, very welcome. So let's see, let's elaborate on the issues that were discussed, because there was also a very important number of agreements signed. And this is what we call the positive agenda. We will talk about maybe the heart of our bilateral issues, but we cannot underestimate the positive agenda, in my view.
Thank you for your initial remarks, and I'll come to the broader geopolitical risks and possible venues of cooperation of Greece and Turkey in that regard. Thank you very much. Now I want to give the floor to Professor Zuhal Mert Uzuner. She's a professor at Marmara University and also the director of Marmara University International Relations Research and Application Center. Yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for letting me to meet with these nice friends from Greece. Actually, I have a very positive atmosphere when we watch all this press conference, and we can see that the positive agenda is working on its own route. So we can talk about the importance and the value of positive agenda, especially for somehow managing crisis and finding a way to create, again, dialogue channels. These are very valuable, let's say, the benefits we took from the positive agenda. Of course, dialogue is very valuable. Why I underline it? Because we are living in a changing world and we have very important difficulties to understand what's happening and what is the next level of crisis around us. So maybe in this the age of uncertainties, we need to have some, let's say, the continuities instead of dramatic changes. From that perspective, protection of dialogue is very valuable and very important. So maybe at the beginning, positive agenda derived from the need for managing, let's say, the crisis and sometimes freezing them. But now maybe we can see there is need to go further and to develop more, let's say, the ways and methods to go further to discuss about our, let's say, the common problems. And from that perspective, regional issues, uncertainties, crisis, not only very political and security-oriented crisis, maybe we should talk about other very important risks for our region, such as environmental degradation or the scarcity about water. So we have many things to cooperate, and they are very real and very daily issue for the people of our countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also on this positive note, so it's good that we start with positive remarks because today both leaders are also very keen on continuing on this positive agenda. And now let's hear the initial remarks of Professor Petros Diakouras, Professor of International Law at the University of Piraeus.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the possibility to talk about today's meeting. Actually, today's meeting was very positive. I totally agree with the two ladies that started the round of discussion concerning today's meeting between the two leaders. My feeling is that the problems remain, but we don't like to create any turmoil in the calm waters. So we need the calm waters. And of course, we know that we have a problem. We have problems. The opportunity was given to the two leaders to expose what the problems are. For example, President Erdogan said that there is a problem, and actually we have to work a little bit more or more on the, as it said to the Turkish minority in Thrace. He used the word the Turkish minority, and we used to say Muslim minority, which is just a small word, but it is a big difference. And of course, this is something that was said on behalf of Erdogan. Erdogan didn't say a word about the extension of territorial waters in the Aegean, didn't say anything about all the other problems that we have, like the maritime spatial planning, didn't say a word about the marine parks, didn't say a word about the different NAFTEX, didn't say a word about the research concerning the lane of submarine cables that created some problem, but not too much in order to create a crisis and, of course, create a problem also to the calm waters. And then Mitsotakis was given the opportunity in his remarks in the final declaration, declaration, to say what are the complaints, what are the problems that Greece finds in the Greek-Turkish relations. That's why he referred actually to the word threats. Didn't say a word about casus belli, but he said only the word threats. Threats meaning anything. Threats coming also from different in the speeches. Of course, speeches of Erdogan always refer to his own public, not to Greece. But Greece is the recipient of all these words, and Greece, of course, translated into threats, big threats, coming from the different declarations and speeches. So he referred to that. Also, he referred to the only the dispute that exists between the two states, which is the delimitation of the continental self-exclusive economic zone, both in the Aegean and the Eastern Mediterranean. Didn't say a word about the Turkish-Libyan memorandum and the overlapping agreement between Egypt and Greece. And of course, both leaders, I think, were very happy because the High Commission as Cooperation Commission was convened finally after so many months in Ankara. And of course, if I understand correctly, or rather, if I understood correctly, there was some sort of agreement in the end that they came into terms concerning the finalization of this High Commission, the High Commission, how we call it, the High Level Commission.
Cooperation Council.
Cooperation Commission, yes. Something I don't know, because I think both referred, actually Erdogan referred to some sort of declaration concerning the different agreements declaration. So do we know the content of that declaration, because it was adopted by both leaders? I don't know if we have something like the Declaration of Athens of 2023. That's why I'm asking. And of course, I think Mitsotakis referred to the political dialogue, and you know that the political dialogue is the the evolution in practice, the evolution of the exploratory talks. And I suppose that this political dialogue has not convened for many months, but Mitsotakis said that they met, the two delegations met in Athens couple of days or last week or something like that. But nothing has been announced actually, and we don't know whether they have met. In my opinion, they have met. They have not met for many months. So if political dialogue is not working, then of course we're not going to have any kind of progress in that kind of, let's say, in that kind of course. Because it is track diplomacy as well, in order to make things easier, in order to go to some sort of delimitation, negotiation, and then agreement. Actually, I understand that both leaders, and especially Erdogan, is willing to keep this calm water situation. I see that, and then I think that Erdogan is more interested in keeping himself in the situation in Syria, or the Kurdish problem in general, rather than of course be occupied with Greek-Turkish relations, and knowing that Greek-Turkish relations will go and go for years. So this is what I got. And of course I totally agree with Ino that it was a very warm reception by Erdogan, and of course it was the climate was excellent, yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree that today both leaders' aim was to at least shelve the bigger disagreements. We can understand that in their speeches, not including certain thorny issues. For example, I also remarked that President Erdogan didn't mention Cyprus issue within the context of today's meeting, although Prime Minister Mitsotakis said that was also discussed. So obviously, two countries, two governments have the intention to continue on keeping dialogue open and exploring the areas of cooperation, even if they are in low political areas. But I also think that low political areas are much more important than we think as IR observers or observers of international politics, because there are a lot of common challenges experienced by two people, including climate, including migration, including international crime, transnational crime, and also there are opportunities of working together in all parts of the surrounding geographies, in terms of common investments and in terms of working together to bring order in war-torn regions. So I will come to how conducive the international order is right now to make countries cooperate more. But before that, I want to ask your opinions, respectively in Turkey and in Greece, regarding how public opinion and how the political climate views the other side. Maybe we can start with our Greek speakers, because Turkey is a much bigger concern when compared to how Greece is a concern in public political discourse. And maybe we can hear Zuhal Hoca, and maybe I can interject. I can make a few remarks, considering that our fourth panelist is absent. But let's first hear from our Greek panelists how the Greek public opinion views Turkey right now, and if they make a comparison with like 5 years ago when there were bigger issues, bigger crises around. So how big a progress has been made within this process of dialogue and call? We can start with.
Look, this is a very important issue that you are raising. And I think this should be a matter of further research and discussion in the realm of the think tanks, both in Greece and Turkey. There is not a very clear, if you ask me, there is not a very clear image how Greek public opinion perceives Turkey. Because I think we have a biased political and media environment that does not necessarily reflect what the majority of the population feels. I mean that if you leave the population express in a public poll, the positive opinions would be, in my view, equal to the negative opinions. There is a very vocal, I would say, minority in Greece, both in the media and in the political spectrum, cultivating a negative perception about Turkey. But on the other hand, I think the public opinion in general would not be negative. And we can see how Greek people go to Turkey, how they receive Turkish people when they come to Greece, and so on. There is no, fortunately, there is no, not even in the darkest moments of our relationship, you cannot detect the hatred that exists between other people with differences. Let's say Israeli and Palestinians. There is no hatred between Greeks and Turks. To the contrary, if you prove step by step that both countries can come closer around common interests, the atmosphere will be even better. But in my opinion, there was never a sincere and very scientific research of the public opinion in both countries. And this vocal minority, I would say, cultivates a climate that I don't think reflects the majority of the population. This is why I support very much not to freeze the differences, but to prove that the differences exist and we have our rights, but on the other hand, there is a potential of cooperation that has to be developed. And especially in this very changing international environment, there are many issues that you can have cooperation instead of confrontation. You mentioned climate, migration, economy, trade, earthquakes, political protection. There are so many fields that you can cooperate. And also to support my argument, because maybe I translate my own feelings, but whenever there is a problem in Turkey, earthquake, or there is a very emotional reaction in Greece, spontaneous. The other moment you have a spontaneous positive reaction. So this proves that there is a perception that is positive, but needs to cultivate in a way that people understand what is in their interest to have better relations with Turkey. I cannot, okay. Now I hear you.
Yes, Professor Liakoras, would you like to add to that?
Let me unmute. Okay. I agree with you. I can say that in Greek public, because of the different declarations and different speeches, either by Erdogan or Fidan or other officials, high-ranking officials, the perception in Greece among the public is that Turkey is a threat. And Turkey is a threat, meaning that we have to buy more frigates, more F-35, more Euro fighters, more submarines, more of this, because just to enjoy that kind of balance of power between between the two states. And because of that, Turkey on its behalf or inside thinks that is threatened by Greece. So this is something that it is a ping pong between the two countries concerning who is threatening whom. But this is a very important thing that in the public, actually we have in, I think in one or two channels in the morning, I mean television stations, we have two television stations in the morning, probably three, I don't know exactly. When they have, half hour of correspondence of the actually reproducing what the different programs and the different talk shows say with regard, from ex diplomats or the retired military officers, etc., who speak about all these problems. But we do the same exactly, and the same also is coming from Turkey, that we have half hour at least every morning. I mean, from 8 to 8:30, one channel, one television station. Another one is almost the same time, but it is almost half hour, saying what is happening in the dialogue, the public dialogue, in the public debate, which is happening actually in different television programs. And this is something that it is, really at the center of interest of the Greek public. And then what? And then now Mitsotakis announced that he is going to meet President Erdogan in Ankara. All of these people in Athens say, no, it's not a good time to go in Ankara because we have tension. And actually tension does not exist for 2 years now, 2.5 years. Okay, but this is the conditions, this is the situation, what is happening among the public. So, and because Mitsotakis at some point said that he would like to ask Erdogan to waive this declaration of casus belli from the public debate, from the public speech, and then you understand that this is something that it is sometimes um, uh, it is something like a mandate given by the public to the prime minister to say to the president of Turkey. So this is a situation that the people think that we are enemies, we are threatened, etc., etc., and of course don't like to hear anything about dialogue. And I find it from sometimes, because I write in different newspapers, as does, and of course Zual also. Anytime when we write to the newspapers about dialogue, then you can see the comments underneath decide what they say about dialogue. I mean, the situation is really bad because actually we have become minority. We are something like 30% of the population that really are, so to say, we are progressive and we think that dialogue is the only way to do that. So something has to be done. Either we have to realize that we need to have the so-called public diplomacy. Ino is a very good expert on public diplomacy, not because she exerted this kind of a profession for many years, and also she wrote a book about this. And of course, the same also can happen. Not the public diplomacy to say what our claims, but public diplomacy to explain and make these two countries come together, come closer. And this is the so important thing to do. Otherwise, if we don't work on this, I mean, not only to have common works, not only to have different projects together, which are very good, but you see, all this law politics, in fact, the law politics do not really assist or support any kind of getting the two countries together, because it is a huge gap between law politics and high politics. Law politics is something that it is for the people to do, and high politics is something for the leaders to do. So actually we have to go and we have to make not only, let's say, between universities or NGOs or other caucuses that exist from one state to the other. LMEP, for example, with SETA, GTF, which is something that it is really pulling together people that believe in dialogue and good relations. So we have to be done something more important. Actually, in my opinion, one of the best chances to have something like this to become was if Turkey were admitted to the EU back in 2000 decades. Because if that happened, then of course Turkey as a member of the EU and Greece as a member of the EU, they are necessary partners. I mean, partners cannot fight in the same regime, in the same organization. So if we cannot find a solution like this, then we have to find something like this to work together, not in law politics only, but also on high politics.
Thank you very much. Especially you highlighted the importance of public diplomacy to
Yes.
engage in public discourses.
Yes.
Maybe Zuhal Hoca may add to that and bring a Turkish perspective and maybe evaluate the Turkish public discourse or perceptions about Greece.
Mhm.
Automatically, Professor Mustafa Aydın's famous public polls, they were realizing this public polls annually, and it was really highlighting some important points, how the Turkish public opinion is looking at all these developments and what kind of consciousness or what kind of information level we can see in public about very vital concepts we are always using in our discourse. I remember, and I was trying to check these public polls, and I catch one of them from 2022, and it's asking several questions, and these were the years of high level of tensions, and the question was about the blue homeland as a concept. Every day we are hearing this concept, and it is very important part of the political discourse in Turkish public. And during those years, you can see the number of people who know what does it mean is very limited and very, maybe some not correct what we understand as academics or politicians. So it shows something very critical, and it reminds me my famous, let's say, study. Actually, it's not my study by myself. It was an edited volume about the role of image in Greek-Turkish relations. So the perceptions are mainly related image construction. So it's not something deriving from daily experiences of people. So it's not about knowing your next door neighbor. So you are learning from several means, such as newspapers, media channels, and political discourse. So it's not something organic, let's say. It is somehow provoked or somehow developed by some politicians or, let's say, public opinion leaders, and in purpose. It is not accidental. So from that point of view, I think this is a professional job to create a kind of public to promote this dialogue and somehow, let's say, the rapprochement in both countries. That's why I believe so much academicians' efforts and sometimes the newspapers' efforts or journalists' efforts to come together to discuss more how to inform public about the possibility of dialogue. It's not something miraculous, actually. It is something very normal part of life. So that's why I want to underline, first of all, this point about public opinion and their perception. And also, I want to underline another very critical issue about public opinion. What we experienced in the last years after the 7th of October, so it created a huge shake in international public opinion. I mean, the international community, it was shaken deeply about all these happenings. And what we were talking about, the importance of this humanitarian aspect of happenings around us, such as earthquakes in Turkey. So, you know, it created also another very important sensational, I mean, the reaction coming from people's heart. So it can be considered somehow organic, and it's a kind of, let's say, the impact of digital community and the effort, let's say, effect of the news and the capacity to reach out all this, the news. So from that point, I think we are in a very interesting time now about the challenge between transactionalism and transnationalism. When I was listening to the dear guests, I remember, yes, maybe the international atmosphere is not so helpful for sometimes talking about a very dramatic change in positions, but on the other side, public opinions have capacity to touch each other. Transnational links are working very well. In case of Gaza, we observe that. So I think for me, for the people who believe dialogue like me, we must work more about the possibility on these transnational links. And yes, as Petros underlined, there are several channels like GTF, I mean the Greek-Turkish Forum, and other the dialogue channels. So they are also producing some nice reports and let's say somehow encouraging people to think like this. And I want to underline another very critical point. Maybe it may give us a little bit more hope not to be so pessimistic. When we look at the positive agenda, yes, it seems sometimes so, let's say, just freezing things. And so many times me, as a part of this group of people who are believing, need to go further. Okay, we need to go further, and we need to talk really real problems, and we may be a little bit more brave about solving them. But on the other side, maybe we can understand the political standpoint, because you know, this high-level cooperation council started at the beginning of 2010, yeah, so 2010. So later we had a high level of crisis in 2019. So it is frozen actually in 2016 after the set of crises emerged in Eastern Mediterranean. So what provoked this breakup about talking cooperation was touching the real, let's say, sensitive points. So when we come to those points, yes, it's not easy to talk about cooperation more because, yes, it needs some more political burden. Okay, so you need to spend more energy, more, I don't know, you need to put more power to push further. So it's not sometimes so easy to go further. But we can see that the positive agenda must be considered as a kind of beginning for further discussions. It was just like a kind of, plastic band after an injury you are putting there, but it's not for staying forever. So the positive agenda is something like this. And when we take it off, we may need to heal it more by putting some additional medicines. So from this perspective, I think we need to underline the importance of this international atmosphere is today pushing us towards more cooperation, and public opinion shall understand or shall be taught by the public opinion leaders that the uncertainty, age of uncertainty needs to be more brave. I know these things like a kind of fairy tale for many years, but there is no more way to find a solution other than being more brave than how we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. These were all important remarks about how to improve bilateral relations. Let me add a couple of remarks by myself, because I've been watching both countries' media for the last few weeks about the forthcoming meeting. And unsurprisingly, in the Greece media, there were far more coverage of this. And every single expert that I knew, and plus many other experts, have published at least one piece and given several interviews about today's meeting. When I look at Turkish media, it was covered in a very limited way, because it is a fact, unfortunately, that when it comes to cooperation and when it comes to dialogue, especially in law politics, it doesn't sell. But alarmism in news discourse is something which can make impact and which can make sensations. So this will always be the case, by the way, and there will be alarmists in both sides about the other side's intentions. So we have to take this for granted. And we have to transcend this, think of ways to how to neutralize the effects of this sort of discourse. There's something that I want to remark in this regard. There are also some experts who are very well-respected professors of international politics, international law, especially in Greek side, but occasionally we see this in the Turkish side as well, that they maybe inadvertently equate dialogue or cooperation with idealism, whereas competition with realism, which is not necessarily always the case. You can be a realist thinker or realist policymaker, but still cooperate with the other side because it is it will give more rewards or more benefits. So this sort of a zero-sum or mutually exclusive understanding of cooperation versus conflict must be transcended when it comes to Turkish-Greek relations, because there are certain problems which are not very easy to resolve. Even when international environment is conducive, it will still be difficult to resolve these long-standing issues. But meanwhile, there is maybe a greater room for understanding and cooperation, which can still continue whenever there are disagreements about certain issues. So I advise, or I recommend, not confusing realism with cynicism. We can be both realist and at the same time thinking ways of cooperating and also trusting each other. Of course, politicians have also important responsibility of keeping a sincere dialogue with each other and making the other side's confidence increase. The mutual confidence increase. But at the same time, maybe think tanks can contribute or augment these efforts by politicians. And today, I think politicians give us very good signals about keeping this positive environment between two countries. As think tankers, maybe we can think of additional mechanisms to increase its impact in public perceptions. So let me come to our last topic, and I want to ask a very quick question, but I mean it's not an easy question, and I will give the floor to our panelists.
Sorry. May I offer one quick proposal, suggestion? Because many times we keep apart and we work apart, and we both believe in the same thing, but we never come together in order to present something to the two leaderships. I mean, from one country to the other. I can say, Joel knows that very well, that I worked with Yücel a couple of years ago, starting to put down some principles of international law of the sea and see how we can make an application of these principles and rules of delimitation in the Aegean. And actually, I'm sorry, it is very confidential. I cannot give you details, but I can say that we came to a very good possible result. With what purpose? To give it to the two leaders. I don't know what happened, if it has been given, in order to get an idea how one Turk and one Greek can work together and of course present something that can be for both sides possible. I can say for this time, to do something really different. Of course, to have one think tank from one side and another thing from the other side, and of course start and play a mediating role, and give something very realistic to the government in order to get to some point of thinking how to get to a solution, how to get to a settlement of the different problems, because we have problems that we cannot touch upon because they are taboo for us, and of course we have to think very realistically about these problems, and of course to think about, and of course to have something like a closed some days meetings and think about this, because you have very good think tanks. INO is also not associated, but it is fully integrated in another, the ELIAMEP in Athens, very progressive. And of course, we can work together in order to present something which is acceptable by both sides, from people who really influence the leaders. This is the one I can say.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is a concrete proposal. Maybe we should work on that. Okay, so my last question would be a quick question, but a difficult question, though. I will actually echo the question that was raised by Zuhal Hoca. How conducive regional and global politics right now to further the cooperation between Turkey and Greece? Because I also want to raise the issue that there are maybe burgeoning or deepening regional partnerships between Greece, Israel, and also America's involvement in the region, which can be misperceived and also maybe reciprocated by Turkey. So taking all these developments into account, what would you say about broader setting? Let's start with Zuhal Hoca this time, and then I'll go to Ino and then Petros.
So when I hear this regional, I remember automatically our another cooperation to think together, EMI under the Geneva Security Center from Switzerland. We are talking about the possibility to organize a regional conference, and is it possible to let's say to solve the problems altogether. And I think this is very important way to solve, especially in our age now. The global dissolution may permit us to think regional and local solutions, and the Eastern Mediterranean is a good place. But now we have a very important impediment in front of us. It is Gaza, what happened in Gaza. And I think Turkey's position is quite clear. The international law perspective is very well defined by Turkish authorities, and when Israel find a way to overcome this responsibility, what happened and what may happen in future, because I saw in the press conference the Gaza issue and the Palestinian question was also mentioned, and Turkey and Greece are on the same page about this two-state solution. So after finding a solution for this, let me to mention this this madness, what is experienced in Gaza. So then we may find a way to create this cooperation, and I'm sure it will help everybody in the region. And this is very possible. It's not something, let's say, very difficult. Here, there's another very important question, of course. It's the Cyprus question. I think today the most important problem is deriving from Gaza and what happened after 7th of October. I want to underline a very important point. Turkish point of view is not about supporting what happened to civilians in 7th of October. This is very much important point. But what happened as a mass punishment is not acceptable, not tolerable from any aspect. So that is very important impediment right now to think regionally. But I believe people's potential. From that perspective, I think that the regional people will find a way, and I believe Israeli rational people, they will find a way to overcome this let's say madness be experienced today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
As I think we all around this virtual table, there is no doubt that we have good feelings towards each other. But bilateral relations or relations between states are not only about feelings, they are about interests. So, in my view, what is missing in the public discourse about Greek-Turkish relations is the mutual interest. And this is something to cultivate. What can be joint interests of Greece and Turkey? And in this way, not eliminating the differences, because if you have a problem, it's better to solve the problem. But sometimes you can solve the problem by going to a higher level of cooperation. What I mean? The breakthrough moment, in my view, in Greek-Turkish relations was in '99 with the Helsinki decisions. This, unfortunately, did not culminate as was the plan. I have the feeling that the situation that you mentioned, international, regional, European situation, we are again at a breakthrough moment. I mean, we face in Europe, I consider also Turkey part of this total, we face existential questions. we are surrounded by conflicts, Ukraine, Middle East. So if we don't manage to keep our area, the European continent safe, we will be in deep trouble sooner than later. So what we need is to accept with honesty and sincerity what is our differences, and then go to a supranational level for cooperation. And this is the European context. I am realist, and I don't believe that all European members of EU would be eager to accept Turkey. You know that better than me. But I see that we have again discussions about homocentric societies in EU, about variable geometry, about partnerships. So if we have this perspective, the two countries can honestly sit down and look for a solution. But the solution should be mutually beneficial. I mean, because if it is not a good solution for both parties, then sooner than later, we will again be in trouble. So this is why I'm saying the European model is the best option to see what can be our mutual interest, if we can find common ground.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Petros Liakouras.
I don't have to say much about this. I totally agree with Ino that actually, because we always express from either side positions. But as Roger Fisher says in his book, Getting to Yes, if you go for positions, you never get an agreement. So you have to find what your interests are in order to really not enjoy, but of course to unravel the interests that are behind the positions that you have. So yes, we have to really sit down both sides and think and elaborate on the interests of each side. I mean, one side to communicate the interest to the other side, and of course, ask the other side what it thinks about, what does it think about the interest, what he thinks, what the interests of that side and of your side, and of course to try to find solutions based on mutual benefit of the interest of both sides. Otherwise, both sides actually is or are very much into really generate interest, and also to enjoy the completed interest in order to get satisfied by the agreement that it reaches. So actually we have to both sides, we have actually to work on first security concerns or common concerns that are influenced or affected by the other side, and then of course to find out what the interests are, and find to make this mutual interests that combine both sides in this situation. So I think the think tanks have they have a lot of work in front of them, in front of you, and to work on this, because otherwise no one can sit down and think about, because every time each delegation goes to a negotiation, always say what the positions of the governments are. So the same also happened tonight. I mean, even Erdogan and Mitsotakis really exposed what the positions of the government are. They did not look into something like, let's say, what are the interests which are hidden behind these kind of positions. So this is the something that both sides should work on this. And because the leaders cannot think about this, or even the staff around in their offices, of course, to have something like a a meeting between people coming from the, so to say, security advisors from it, or advisors on foreign policy of both sides, and sit down and hear people coming also from think tanks.
Yes, I think frequently informing the other side about the views, foreign policy views of countries is very crucial here, because when I read expert opinions from both sides, but since it is more covered in Greece, I see that the general conviction about today's meeting and also steps for cooperation is that these are temporary. This is a temporary process, and eventually there will be a crisis, and therefore our country must be prepared for that crisis. So we have to make parallel moves, strategical moves, to prevent any unwanted results of that eventual clash. I think we have to go beyond this way of thinking, because we don't know how the uncertain international environment will continue, and what kind of regional and global crisis will erupt, and how severe their results will be in the future. So instead of considering the main problems as fixed and eventual points of conflict, we have to concentrate on how to deepen this climate of cooperation and dialogue. And I think more realist and reasonable experts should be able to find a common way of doing that. Would you like to add something to all these points? I mean, I can give you a couple of minutes for each for your final remarks. We can start with Ino Afeduli.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think we had a rather positive discussion. I would be, let's say, I mean, on a more positive note, I would be happy to be invited at this dinner now at the Presidential Palace. Not, I mean, to listen the discussion, which would be interesting, but to taste the food, because I love the food.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe. Yes, Petros Diakras. Let's hear your.
I'm in the same line.
Great. Zuhal Hocam.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure to hear all these nice opinions. Maybe as a last, let's say, to the sentence, I may refer that we are not the biggest actor in international politics. So maybe keeping our order and peace somehow must be much more important for us. And so dialogue and multilateralism are still very important tools for us. From which aspect you are looking at the issue is not changing this fact. So I hope we may utilize this nice means for finding solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to thank you all for joining us at this time of the day. Normally our events are much earlier, but we waited for the end of the press conference and made a special panel right after the meeting. So, Ino Afeduli, Petros Diakouras, Zuhal Mert Uzuner, thank you very much for joining, and I hope we'll meet in further events. Thank you.